Welcome live to the Florence Barleycorns. It's another Monday night, and it's a Cooper football show with Jaguars coach Randy Borchers and others. We got plenty of others tonight, too. Are they sending you a message, cutting down on your talk time? I'm Tom Gamble, your host, and the number one ranked Cooper Jaguars in 5A in the state of Kentucky, coming off a big win on Saturday. Should have played Friday night, but that's a whole other story. Saturday morning, 24-21 over Highlands. Probably need a physician. I have this. Need to get St. Elizabeth Healthcare out here, see if they can cure. I don't know that that's. Well, they could cure your cough, but anyway. All right, here's our guest tonight. Got plenty of people. We have Terry Boehmker, who writes for the NKY Tribune. Used to work with me at the way back in the days of the Kentucky Post. For those of you who've never heard of that, that means you're young. It's the only explanation. We're going to talk to a couple coaches tonight: Ben Brown, Paul Westhoff. A couple of the assistant coaches, and also two of the guys who were particulars on Saturday. That would be Jaidan Combs, big 88-yard kickoff return for a TD to start the game, and Isaiah Johnson, who had 5 catches for 116 yards, another big game, and there were plenty of guys with big games, but we'll start with a congratulations on the win, 24-21 over Highlands. You've won 3, really. I mean, I guess the first game last year was – you trailed and kind of hung in there, lost 58-51, but the last 2 games, both wins in Fort Thomas for Cooper, 17-15 in the state semis, and on Saturday have been really tight and really good football games, despite weather conditions again on Saturday morning. So congratulations.
Thanks. And, yeah, both games literally came down to the last play. So, I walked off the field and people's like, man, I can't do these 2 minutes anymore. So last 2 games came down to the last 2 minutes.
Yeah, and you really had. I mean, this is a good Highlands football team, and obviously you bumped ahead of Bowling Green in the media poll, the statewide 5A media poll. You're still number 1 in the 5A RPI. But, I mean, that game was really back and forth. It looked like, and, you got to talk about things that happened in the game, but, you look, you get the opening kickoff for a touchdown, and then you have a big chance right before the half, which was a great run by Keegan Mayer. There would have been a touchdown had the ball not been jarred loose and out of the end zone. So it could have been, at that point, a 14-point lead. But, you face adversity and you come back. Nobody scored in the third quarter, and then they tighten it up on a great catch, the Isaiah Johnson lookalike catch by Lorenzen in the end zone, which was defended well by Mason Stanton, but he made a great play. Then you get Eiler Tibbs with the field goal, and made all 3 of the PATs, and then your defense steps up big, and the last pass falls incomplete. So a huge win. I mean, that game's a huge win on multiple levels, but in the RPI, you have to feel good, and I'm not going to jump ahead, but if you can close out the year, you have to feel like you should be number 1 in the RPI going in the postseason, correct?
Well, you would think, but somehow we dropped this weekend in the RPI. So we went – so trying to figure that whole thing out.
Well, we won't do that. Somebody else
right.
will.
I mean, our big thing is just take care of our business and let it fall where it falls.
And we'll get to this week's game, which is a day earlier than normal. It's a Thursday night game, senior night, 7:30 kickoff against the 5-1 Connor Cougars. We'll talk about that game again on Thursday. But let's talk about that Highlands game. And, I mean, there were so many guys and really – Cam O'Hara, you knew at some point he was going to throw an interception. That was kind of a key one, too, because you had a chance early after taking over on a fumble recovery maybe to make it 14-0 right out of the gate. But his first INT of the year had a touchdown pass as well, where he's got a streak of more than 20 games of throwing a TD. I thought you got some really sound play from a lot of different guys, but let's talk about your defense, because I really felt like defensively, I mean, Riker Campbell, again, 14 tackles. Mason Stanton, 12 tackles. Max Wethington, 12 tackles. Mike Mulvihill back in the lineup made a huge difference, I thought. 5 tackles, a sack. Austin Alexander, 7 tackles. I mean, you had a lot of guys on defense against a big, formidable front for Highlands. I thought your defense played pretty well.
Defense played great, and I think the biggest stat of that game was I think they rushed for 3.7 yards a carry. And I think they were averaging almost 6 yards a carry. So, defensively we played really well. We gave up some big plays in the passing game, which is kind of uncharacteristic of us. But, we had to sell out so much on the run. It kind of, isolated some of our DBs one-on-one, and they made us pay.
Well, I was going to say, if you want me to look, and I watched the game in the comforts of my own, very weird. And I got to tell you, the Highlands YouTube, they do a great job with the broadcast. It's very weird, though, because the young man he also does the public address announcing. So you watch the play in the video, and then you hear him make the PA, and that's just different because there's no commentary whatsoever. But they should be commended for doing a really good job. You know, if you're looking to pick holes, and you are as a coach, I mean, you got to look at things and keep the guys on their toes to going into any game. You gave up a lot of yards on special teams, and other special teams, you know, maybe a week not great there. You were right. They did have some receivers that were essentially pretty open down the field. But, I mean, you got to look for things like that because naturally you're trying to take and make sure that you don't get complacent. And let me back up and start with the decision, first of all, to not play Friday night. I know you had nothing to do with that. Everybody – apparently, I don't know, something different in Kentucky than in Ohio because everybody played in Cincinnati with the exception of schools that didn't literally have power and others for safety reasons. Every game but 2 on Friday night canceled in Northern Kentucky. And as it turned out on Friday night, you know, our Skyline Chili Crosstown Showdown game, Elder St. X, was at Elder. They just bumped it back 30 minutes. It wasn't even raining during the game. How difficult was that? And then, of course, to play at 10 a.m., which is a normal JV time. And I know there are a lot of those. You hear it in college football when a team is on the West Coast and they have to come and play like a noon game. Let's be honest, a lot of high school kids, 10 a.m. is not the best time to play a game.
Yeah, and I think the toughest thing with it, we really did not find out till almost 11 o'clock that the game was going to be
11
canceled.
p.m. on Friday.
11 a.m. on Friday.
A.m., right.
Yeah, so, and then we had to go to lunch, then we were getting the kids on the bus, so I really did not even have any time to talk to our kids. So, you know, you always want to give them that speech of let's be smart tonight, let's not go out, let's not do anything stupid. And we really didn't have the opportunity to talk to those guys, so we kind of left it up in the hands of our seniors and our leadership guys and our captains. And you know, when they came in on Saturday, they listened because, you know, our kids came in ready to play from the first snap.
Well, no offense, if you went out last Friday night, you're more of a man than me because I was out there trying to figure out how I was going to saw down these big limbs that all fell down in my backyard. It was some rough weather, and it still today is weird. I mean, we're still getting the remnants of Hurricane Helene, so hopefully we'll get – looks like by Thursday it'll be beautiful and sunny for senior night. Connor against Cooper, and yes, you look like you had something.
You can't look at the weather this far out. We'll look Thursday morning and decide how it's going to be.
No, but they're telling me, I'm following along, they're telling me the rest of the week it is going to be nice. So injuries come out of that game okay. Didn't seem to see anybody. I mean, is pretty healthy for this point. I mean, week 7.
Yeah, you're in week 7, so you're going to have some bumps and bruises. And then, you know, you were talking about the hardest thing was playing Saturday morning. I think the hardest thing is going to be turning around and playing, you know, Thursday night.
Was there any thought of moving the game? I mean, because obviously Thursday you're on fall break. I know Friday and Monday, so it's a 4-day weekend. Any at least consideration for moving it from Thursday to Friday?
Yeah, we talked about it, but you know, we had some people that are valuable support staff and that already had plans because this has been in the works to play on Thursday. So logistically, it just didn't work. You know, so the big thing is we're both on the same. You know, we're in a war for 4 quarters. So, you know, obviously our guys are a little banged up.
Couple things of programming note. Want to thank Billy Prickett for doing the audio. Matt Razor, who's normally, if you're wondering, there's usually a camera, there's usually video. Matt works for Duke Energy, and he's on the grid, so he is still trying to restore power for some of. We missed him twice. Once early in the year when he got called down to Florida. He didn't have to leave town this time, but he's still working on the grid to restore power. So, and for those who know, he makes as much as I do for doing this show, so he had to keep his real job, right?
No excuses, Tom.
No, that's. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. So, all right, let's. You're done. I mean, but let's talk a little bit before I let you go. Let's talk about Connor. I mean, I don't know that anybody expected them. It's very weird. They've won 5 games. Their one loss was 48-6 at home to Ryle. So it was a lopsided defeat to Ryle, but they've played. You know, and I would argue a little bit, if you look just at records, maybe their schedule hasn't been. I mean, they beat 1A Newcap soundly. They beat Scott. They beat 2 teams from Lexington, and I think guys in my neighborhood could beat, and that would be Paul Dunbar and Lafayette. But nonetheless, they're a pretty good football team, and I know they were really young last year, had a ton of guys back. Dave Trosper does a nice job. I know Jim Hicks, the AD, is a member of their staff, but they're off to an outstanding 5-1 start, and they have a slight advantage in the all-time series. You've won a couple in a row, including a lopsided one. That was in the Skyline Chili Crosstown Showdown last year over in Hebron, but this is certainly a team that, they're rivals. I mean, they're, between Connor and Ryle, I think they've become two of the big rivals of Cooper, and it's a Thursday night game, a senior night. But Wyatt Hatfield, who's their quarterback, who does a great job running the football, what are some other concerns that you have about a Connor team that's won 5 of 6 games?
Well, going back to that Ryle game, which you mentioned, the Hatfield kid was injured that game, so he played, but he didn't play quarterback. And they're a totally different team with him at quarterback. Everything runs through him. Some of the cuts he makes and the vision he has is there's not another kid that we've played up until this point or most probably will play that has a vision that he has. So, we know everything's going to run through them. We got to find a way to I wouldn't say stop him because I don't think you're going to stop him, but we need to find a way to contain him and get some stops.
Now, you and Trosper are kind of the old men, right? I mean, you guys have been around. I think you're about the same tenure at your respective schools. You've been at Cooper since the beginning. I think Dave's been 18 years. Yep. Yeah. So, and he's done a nice job. I mean, Connor is always a very fundamentally sound football team and a public school like Cooper. So you go with what you got, but you pretty much probably know what to expect. When you play Connor.
When you play Connor, you're going to get their best ball game. He has these kids ready every week, but I think he particularly has them ready when they play us. He does a tremendous job. I mean, I think he's one of the top coaches in Northern Kentucky. He has been over the years, and he gets the most out of his players every year. Some years they're not as talented as some other teams, but he knows what he has. He knows how to get the most out of those kids, and he always had. You're always going to be in a tight ball game when you play Connor.
All right, so there you have it. A big win for Cooper on Saturday, 24-21 over Highlands, and then Connor up on Thursday night. You can take a brief rest, but you'll come back with me at the very end, work on that cough between now and then. Coming up in just minutes, I'm going to welcome Terry Boehmker, who writes for the Northern Kentucky Tribune, has been around and covered more Northern Kentucky events than maybe only Dan Weber, who works for him now. The two of them can duel it out on who's covered the most. But Terry's a good man and enjoyed working with him back in the days of the Post. We'll find out what he thinks about some of the teams here in Northern Kentucky. When we continue, it's a Cooper Football Show with Jaguars coach Randy Borchers and others right here from the Florence Barleycorn. Welcome back to Florence Barleycorns. It's the Cooper Football Show. I'm Tom Gamble, your host. And don't forget, we get the double dip on Monday night again. We've got the Dolphins with a backup quarterback against a terrible Tennessee team at 7:30. And then the second game should be, at least in theory, a good one. 3-0 Seattle and the Detroit Lions 2-1. So that's the second game starting at 8:15. So
if you can stay up that late.
If you can stay up that late. Well, I can guarantee you this. I'd be teetering on the edge right now if I wasn't here. It's my pleasure to welcome Terry Boehmker, who has covered a lot of sports in Northern Kentucky. When did you first start?
Well, I started with the Kentucky Post in '78, but 2 years before that I was doing a radio show for the immortal Dale McMillan on WHKK.
Yeah. So let's make sure we repeat that. He started, especially for you football guys, in 1978. Isn't it scary when you look back at some of that stuff?
More and more. Every time I go to a game, I'll talk to a player, and he said, "Oh, you covered my dad when he played."
Makes you feel great, doesn't it?
Right.
Well, it's funny because I actually started in 1979 when I was in high school because one of my high school friends, Ron Cobb, his dad, Barry Cobb, was the assistant sports editor in Cincinnati, and they needed people to come in on Friday nights and just take the scores over the phone. People don't realize that that's how it used to happen. You used to have to answer the phone and hope that Jim on the other end had all the information you want. And as you well know, it was iffy.
It was like pulling teeth a lot of times, especially if the stat person was a newcomer or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And you'd ask him, what about yards per carry? Or what about, interceptions?
So let me ask you this. You've seen a ton of football players. If you had to give me the best football players that you ever saw personally that played in Northern Kentucky, that doesn't have to be in any order, but what are some of the names that immediately come to mind?
Well, Sean Alexander jumps to your mind automatically. Right. He was like a man among boys when he played. Nobody could stop him. And, of course, Jared Alexander and Jared Lorenzen. Jared Lorenzen. And, and then the list goes on and on. I mean, all the great running backs they had at Boone County, all through the years, and the great quarterbacks they've had at Highlands.
Yeah.
You're talking about Gadulis, and you're talking about, all those guys.
Right.
It's all the teams with great traditions had great players.
Is there a team or teams that you think from watching and remembering the ones who are some of the better teams? I mean, obviously Highlands has won 23, Beechwood's won 17, but I mean, are there any in particular that come to mind as being like the most? And Covcath has obviously won 8. So I mean, and for when Lynn Ray was there, they were 5 for 5 in the state championship game. Do any come to mind as being the best that you saw?
This is going to sound funny, but back in '75, Lloyd went undefeated. The Lloyd football team went undefeated. I think they were Class 3A, I guess, back then. But they were a monster team. I mean, they had a monster line. They had a great running back. But they were coached by Jim Doherty.
Red Dog, who went to Highlands, right?
Highlands,
yeah, okay.
Was their defensive. But that was an unbelievable team, and that was the first team I really covered that won a state championship. So that kind of always has a special place, I guess, in my heart for great teams. But I mean, the Boone County teams, they should have won championships.
Yeah, no question.
When they had it separated between Louisville and the state, you were the state 4A champ, and you were the Louisville 4A champ. And they would always get to that doggone state final.
Couldn't get past whoever the Louisville. It's funny, I ran into Ray Arnold, who played at Boone County, and his son, because his son Maddox plays for Elder. He's hurt, unfortunately, and is out for the year, but he's going to the University of Toledo. And ran into him last week, and he was just talking about some of those and he was talking about Boone County and Elder, because he was talking about how they split when they played his last 2 years, and it's amazing how back in the day some of those games. I want to ask you this. Mike Yeagle sadly passed away recently, and I don't know if there's a sadder fall from grace story than Mike Yeagle.
That's very true. I mean, he devoted himself 24/7. I mean, a lot of coaches do that, but I think he went the nth degree. He was, football from sun up to sundown. That's all he was. And even during the off season, when he wasn't at the racetrack, he was thinking football.
But I mean, he's a guy who he was so successful, and then he kind of just, kind of disappeared, for lack of a better way. I mean, I know plenty of people. I consider myself a friend of Mike. He was a great source when I was at the Post, and he just, and all of a sudden, people would say I try to reach out to him, and that's really one of the sadder. And I don't say this, it'd be I don't mean this to sound not an interesting documentary, but it's kind of a strange and almost amazing fall from grace for a guy who was, to me, one of the top coaches ever that I've ever dealt with on any level.
Right. When he, like you say, fall from grace, he and I were discussing doing a book about his football coaching and his success with Beechwood, which is a small school, but they were beating big schools left and right all the time. Yeah. And then, a lot of things happen. A lot of life gets in the way a lot of times and interrupts your football situations. And that's what happened with Mike.
I'll give you a little plug because you're an author. Terry Boehmker, I'm talking, is my guest from the Northern Kentucky Tribune. Spent many years with the Post. But let's talk Connor. You've seen Connor twice this year.
I have.
So you saw him against Ryle when they lost, and as Randy Borchers alluded to, without Wyatt Hatfield playing quarterback, and then you saw them defeat Newport Central Catholic, and you agreed and echoed the sentiment that they are a much different team with or without Hatfield at quarterback.
Definitely. He is the engine that runs the team for sure. If they can move the ball with him, and then it's fantastic. And he's got that knack, like Randy said, he's got that knack for that vision where he can make something out of nothing. I mean, he'll drop back to pass, and the thing will just collapse around him, and he's got a way of weaving through the crowd and making a first down. He's a very gifted player.
Are there any? I know you obviously we're talking football tonight, but I know you've covered a lot. Are there other sports that you enjoy covering as well? And what are some of the reasons that make them so enjoyable for you?
Well, I went to Covington Catholic during the 70s, and that was their heyday. They won 5 straight regional titles, and that's really what kind of made me want to become a sports writer. I did the yearbook stories on the Covington Catholic, those great Covington Catholic teams, and I said, yeah, this is what I want to do. But then I went to college, and I was going to be a teacher because I wanted to stay around that high school vibe, and but football. You cover football in Northern Kentucky. I mean, you were almost guaranteed a state championship.
Yeah.
And sometimes we had 3 or sometimes 4 teams making a run at a title. So that really, comes to the forefront. And football is such an enjoyable game to cover. I mean, basketball is such a grind, the whole season, 30 games.
Too many games.
Oh,
yeah, a lot of, especially in Northern Kentucky where they don't, in the state of Kentucky, unlike Ohio, they don't put limits. It's like baseball in the spring.
Right.
They can just play to their heart's content. I mean, no, you're right. I mean,
right. And football, you got that Friday night. Unfortunately, that was rained out this week, but you got that Friday night
or Thursday night, like
or
Cooper
Thursday
Connor.
night. True,
right.
True. I guess it has something to do with referees, from what I'm understanding.
Well, it does. I mean, and Steve Frohmeyer, I know that is an issue. I mean, there are some Friday nights where they were like this past week. They had to cancel every junior varsity game on Saturday because of all the varsity games being moved to Friday. That's an epidemic.
And it's statewide.
It is.
Yeah.
Now,
and it's over in Ohio too, from what I understand.
It's everywhere.
Right.
I mean, do you want to be an official?
Amen. I know.
I
know. It is the hardest job in the world. I mean, you got to be physically, emotionally, visually.
Wear your noise cancelers.
Yeah,
maybe,
wear your noise cancelers.
So then when you go over to the coach, take them off. I mean, it's crazy that we've reached that kind of a sad state.
And if you're ever on the sideline and you see the way they run a game, you get a whole new appreciation for them because things go haywire every now and then, and they straighten it out.
So I know you and I are the traditional journalists of years gone by. Could you see what has happened to journalism? Because you're all online. I mean, it's, and part of my deal was I loved Saturday mornings, and I know this is foreign to some, going out, getting the paper, opening up to the 2 big widespread high schools, reading all the different guys, because I loved high school football. Did you ever think, A, number one, that we'd be here, and B, that you're still going, right? I mean, come on now.
Amen. I started a thing this week, or this season, called Football Flashback, where I go and I research some of the great games that were held during
I've seen some of those, yeah.
And I'll go to the library, and I'll get on that microfilm, and I swear I'll be mystified. Because, you go to the pages that were, like you said, published on a Friday or a Saturday, and all of a sudden, I'm looking for this game, but all of a sudden I'm reading like 6 or 7, 8 games. It was magical on Saturday morning, and my gosh, it was so much fun.
I'm with you. I can remember.
Of course, we had to go through the crazy Friday nights to get them out on time on Saturday mornings, which people don't understand. But
I can remember going down to the library at the Cincinnati Post, and it was when Moeller was in its prime. But this is when they had a librarian who would literally he would cut every story out of the paper, and then they'd file it by name. And I can remember they'd say, go get the Jerry Faust file. I can remember getting that Jerry Faust. I could barely carry the thing up. It was so heavy.
Right.
But it's great. Now, do you enjoy what do you enjoy about today's journalism? Maybe nothing. It's okay to be honest here. But do you enjoy today comparative, or is it so different that, you're still cranking them out, right?
Well, when I go to a game and I see these younger journalists, and they're monitoring the game, and they're posting.
Doing all. You mean you're not getting on X for me and giving me every play update?
I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could do it because I'm trying to absorb the game and trying to get an idea of the flow and the who steps up and all that kind of stuff. And they're just typing away.
Let me tell you something. If you're on the other end of that X and you're paying attention to every play, you need to get a life. I mean, honestly, there are some dudes in basketball that literally will give you every basket. I mean, who in their right mind is sitting at home following along with every single play?
I'm sure there are.
Get a hobby.
I'm sure there are.
Well, seriously, get something to do.
But like on the weekend like this, I'm sure there were a lot of posts.
Well, no, I get
especially that morning game.
Now, that's what's cool about today's media. You can stream. You got YouTube. Like, I literally watched the game from the comfort. I'm like, I'm Teflon, so I can't, I don't want to go out there, right?
That's what I did Friday with the Newcath game, the Newcath Racing game.
You?
Unfortunately, they didn't look too good,
No,
but
that was bad.
but it was a lot, I guess, more convenient.
Sure.
And I could get it done and get it published a lot more quickly.
Well, right. I remember. I can tell you stories, and I won't incriminate people's names, but I know when a lot of these Northern Kentucky teams would play downstate, and the games were on radio. Let me tell you. And they used to, one of the things you'd put, like, the date line is where the game, like, you were showing that you were there. There were a few lies. Yeah.
Well, if you've ever had to drive down to Ashland
I get it.
on Route 8 before AA was in.
Somebody both of us know may have done that a time or two. I'm just saying now. I'm just saying. You better hope your radio doesn't go out, right? You better hope it's all there.
Well, back in the days when we had those humongous computers,
right?
And we'd have to find into a phone booth.
Oh yeah,
and try to hook up.
People don't realize that.
God.
We had to literally go the couplers and with the phone booth. I had to write stories with the headlights of my car on.
Right.
It was ridiculous.
I wrote one at Frisch's one night in the mountains of Kentucky. So. Then I had to come down on a foggy mountain and hope to get home.
Well, I appreciate you stopping by. It's always good to catch up and hang out for a little bit and have another beverage, which I know that's you can write, you can cover stuff. Now, I do have to ask you this, though. I'd be remiss. I've never been there, and Brady Labor and I were talking about this, and I'm referencing Herb and Fells.
Oh, my gosh.
Because that's in the family, right?
Yeah, my grandfather started that in 1937. And then my dad took it over after he got back from the war, World War II. And then my brother took it over in probably the early 70s. And then, so it was in our family.
Do you ever go still?
Oh, yeah.
So I'll tell you what, Brady
we'll go down and watch Bengal games.
Well, Brady and I will reach out, and we'll go down there and we'll buy you a burger. How about that?
You got to go down and watch a Bengal game and see Nux. Nux is the biggest Bengals fan this side of the river. And he really makes it a worthwhile experience.
How old would Nux be?
I graduated with him.
Oh, you
so
did?
He's 70, yeah, just like me.
Does he dress up and all the...
He's not known to do that. He'll wear a Bengals hat and all that
stuff.
stuff.
I won't hang around anybody who's dressed in full regalia.
But when the Bengals play the Browns...
I have standards.
When the Bengals play the Browns, we got some Browns fans down there, too. It is really entertaining.
Might go to that one.
Yes.
Yes. But we need to get down. I've had people tell me, you got to go. So I got to go at some point.
For sure.
Terry, always
buddy.
great.
Good seeing you.
Terry Boehmker, Northern Kentucky Tribune, wrote for the Post. Read the NKY Tribune. He does a great job with stuff. So appreciate you stopping by. Take a quick time out, and then I'm going to welcome up Ben Brown and Paul Westhoff, a couple coaches. We'll talk to them, assistant coaches for Cooper, and then we got a couple players to wrap things up with Coach Borchers tonight. It's the Cooper Football Show right here at the Florence Barleycorn. All right, we are live at the Florence Barleycorns. Of course, if you're listening to this later in the week, we won't be live, but we're live now. It's Monday night, little Monday Night Football, and it's my pleasure to welcome in two of the assistant coaches for the Cooper Jaguars. Assistant head coach and assistant offensive coordinator, Mr. Ben Brown, whose son Isaac does a nice job for the Jaguars, and then long time, veteran.
Long time.
Wide receivers coach Paul Westhoff, who coached my son Nathan, who said to tell you hello.
Tell him I said hello.
Yeah. So, all right. I'm going to start with you first, Ben.
All right.
Let's talk about Saturday. Huge win.
Yeah.
Friday night you're anticipating, and then you find out Friday morning it's going to be Saturday morning, 10 a.m. Obviously, Jaidan Combs kind of set the tone with a kickoff return for a touchdown, but you have to like how this offense has played. Maybe not on all cylinders Saturday, but against a good Highlands defense. Assess after 6 weeks how you're feeling about the Jaguars' offense.
I feel really good. I enjoy that we have multiple guys that can catch the football, can run the football, and it can be a different guy any night. So it's really cool when you have that. We were on the headphones, and Austin Alexander made that touchdown catch, and I literally just told Rain, I was like, "This is nice to have dudes. Like we just got dudes. I mean, it's
and I don't want to cut you, but you look at Saturday and you've got Cam O'Hara still through the touchdown pass. You got Isaiah Johnson, 116 yards receiving. Austin Alexander, the big 71-yard TD reception. You've also got Keegan Mayer, who ran for over 100 yards. Again, I mean, when you can turn to that many guys, it's almost like – and Jaidan Combs had 150-plus yards total offense. So when you're reeling off 4 and 5 guys every week, get kind of a luxury as an offensive coordinator.
Yeah, it is, and it's a lot of fun to coach because those guys – and I think Randy kind of mentioned this, those guys are just so unselfish. Like, none of them care who gets the ball. None of them care who gets the glory. None of them care who scores this touchdown, that touchdown. None of them care. All they care about is that we got more points than the other team at the end of the game, and it's fun.
Paul, you get to watch these guys in practice and see these receivers, and I mean, I got to believe it. And for those who don't know, this is you're retiring as a coach right at the end of this season.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
You picked a couple good years to go out on, right? I mean,
I did.
But how much fun is it, and how much in amazement do you sometimes go, did he really just do that? Because these guys make those kind of plays.
Yeah, I mean, it's a daily thing almost with these guys. And now I'm to the point where I'm just nothing surprises me. But the thing that I enjoy the most is they're such great kids to be around. They all buy in. They come to work every day. They work really hard. They're prepared. And they're just a great, great bunch of guys to be around, a great bunch of guys to work with. And some of the stuff they do, I mean, I've been doing this now for 32 years on the high school level, and they just it's unbelievable. Like, I've never had this many, never been this deep with this much talent. I mean, it's just a lot of fun.
Now, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, because I know you played at Boone County.
Yes,
right?
sir.
And you played with Dan Mayer.
Yep.
And you also played, I know, for those football guys in the room tonight, I'm sure some guys look at Shane Beckett and they hear stories about his prowess as a player in his days at Boone County. And they probably think that these are fables, right? I mean, do you hear the chuckle, right? But you can attest. I mean, this guy was a hell of a linebacker, defensive player. He's still to this day. Sean Alexander played there. He holds the record for the longest run from scrimmage in Boone County history. Attest to Beckett as a player. These are true stories.
They are true. He was a senior when I was a sophomore, and Shane was our tailback. He was a great player. People don't realize.
Say that again. He was our tailback.
He was our tailback in those days.
All right.
You know, he was a great player, no question. Yep.
See, how about that?
It's all true.
Give it up for Shane. I know. Maybe today, right?
Yeah, it was true.
Yep. People watching in the audience, right? Yeah, so, for both of you guys, when you look at, you're 6-0, you're ranked number 1, you're number 1 in the RPI. In theory, and I can say this, you're not saying this, you have 4 winnable games that remain. Obviously, the ultimate goal is to win the last game of the year, which would be the state final. How about the mindset of this team? I mean, did last year getting there and almost winning, have they been focused every week? Do you sense that there will never be any complacency no matter who you play? It's dialed in and ready to go. Talk about what these guys – and you're right. I mean, for everybody I've talked to up here, they're really nice guys. They're good talkers. But what about their focus and the ability to stay dialed in on what the ultimate goal is?
I think people underestimate how much of a grind high school football is.
Oh, it's year-round now.
Yeah.
I mean,
So, the kids' expectation after playing in the state final, I think it's gone up tenfold. I mean, now it's starting. Yeah. I mean, I think it's starting to be that thing where nothing else really matters except getting to the end one and winning it all. And that's been their focus, even through off-season, even through all the training, all these games. Like, I've never been around a group of kids, and it's from top to bottom. I've never been around a group of kids where, like, they know the expectation, they know the goal, and they hold each other accountable to be able to play at that level week in and week out.
Paul, I want to ask you about the wide receivers, and you mentioned about how they're a complementary group, but they're competitive.
Oh yeah.
And if you watch football at the highest level, I mean, it seems to me that wide receivers have become the biggest diva position that there is, right?
Yes.
And sometimes they say and they talk nice, but you can watch their reaction on the sideline when they're not getting the ball thrown to them. I mean, that happens at the highest level. How have you managed with this group, and collectively, how is this group managed? Because I've never seen that. How is this group managed from week in and week out when one of them isn't getting as many touches as he would like or as many targets? How have you managed to keep them all from losing focus?
It's amazing that they're so unselfish. I think that's what's really, really special about this group of guys. And I've had them all except for Jaidan. Jaidan came in last year, but I've had them all since they were freshmen and sophomores coming up. And they're focused on one thing, and that's winning. And they're all bought in. They're bought into what we're doing offensively. And it's amazing. It really is. In today's day and age, they don't complain. They don't, I didn't get enough touches. When am I going to get the ball more? And I've dealt with kids like that before. And it's just great. It's just amazing what great kids they are and how unselfish they are week in and week out. And it's like that in practice as well. So they're just a great group to be around.
Ben, I want to ask you about the guy sitting on the other side of me here, because I know I hear a lot of people talk about how much the players really like and respect Paul. Mm-hmm. Can you kind of echo that sentiment? I mean, I know from my son Nathan, who was a wide receiver, he talked about, he loved playing for this guy and really liked his energy and enthusiasm and teaching. I mean, do you see that as another coach on the staff?
Oh, absolutely. Me and Paul go back. I mean, we've been coaching,
20-something years
together.
Because you guys were together at Boone, right, before you came here. Okay.
Yeah, so we were at Boone before this. And, dude, his energy has never changed. It's never changed. Like, he coaches kids the same way. He coaches them in love. He coaches them with respect. And he's also can be hard on them. I mean, he'll rip from the scout guy to Isaiah. It doesn't matter who you are. If you don't do it the right way, he will rip your tail, and he don't care. But he'll also love on you. And he's also going to give you everything he has from the first drill of practice all the way through the game, after the game. He is always about the kids. He's always about making the kids better. And I'm telling you, he is the most non-selfish guy. Like, he didn't even want to do this. We had to beg him to come up here to do this because he just doesn't. That's not him. He doesn't want the spotlight. He don't want any kind of glitz or glamour. He just wants to go and do his job, and he's done it. He's done a tremendous job with our guys.
Well, let me ask you a final question, Paul.
Sure.
And I know you got a lot of football left this year, but when you think about retiring.
Mm-hmm.
What will you miss the most? I mean, is it and what led you to the decision to say, okay, maybe this is it for me?
It's the time. It's long enough. I have other interests besides it. I still love it. I'll miss the kids and I'll miss the coaches mainly because it truly is a family. And I love all those kids all the way from 1 all the way down to 72 or however many we've got. And I'll cherish the time I've had here with the coaches, and it's been great. But they all say, you know when it's time. People tell you you'll know when it's time, and it's time.
I'm right there too. I'm at the what's that, the precipice?
Yeah, I mean, I have a grandson now.
Well, I get it. I don't have that, but it's still time, my friend. Yeah, it's getting close.
So it's time.
I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, how'd you get that sweatshirt? It's kind of nice.
If Coach Borchers
for anybody
ain't
out
anything,
there, is there some place people can get
Coach Borchers
that?
ain't it. Coach Borchers got swag on swag. Listen. This is just the stuff he gives. You should see his closet.
Oh no, I have.
Gosh,
all I know is he brought me.
The stuff he walks in with. I'm like, come on, like really?
He brought me a pullover the first week, and I think they couldn't be worn anymore because it was so damn small.
Yeah.
So.
But no, dude, he takes care of us. It's legit.
Well, man, I always enjoy talking to you guys. Ben, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Paul,
thank you, sir.
Come on, we're going to bring you back. You're not done this year. We're bringing you back. You got a lot of weeks to go, so you'll be back. So when we continue,
thank you.
Let's talk to Jaidan Combs, who started it off on Saturday with a big 88-yard kickoff return, and then Isaiah Johnson, who continues to play great football. 2 members of the Jaguars' unbeaten team, but thanks to Ben Brown, Paul Westhoff, 2 coaches who helped make Cooper what it is today. We'll continue. It's the Cooper Football Show, live at the Florence Barleycorn. Welcome back to the Florence Barleycorns. It's the Cooper Football Show. As I hate to keep anybody from watching the Dolphins and Titans. which is the first of 2 Monday night games. The 8:15 game is better, the Seahawks and Lions, at least in theory, right? All right, it's my pleasure to welcome 2 members of the Jaguars football team, Jaidan Combs and Isaiah Johnson, 2 guys who have been a huge part of the success of this year. So first of all, either one of you guys can answer. When you find out it's 10 a.m. on Saturday, what are you thinking? Would you, Jaidan, I'll go to you. You obviously didn't affect you, right? You took the opening kickoff and ran it 88 yards. But is that something? I mean, it's been a while since you guys have played it. A game for real, and a big game, the biggest game of the year so far at 10 a.m. What were you thinking?
I was just making sure we were ready. We have a group chat, and we were making sure, like, let's get to bed on time. Like, let's not stay up late and wake up at enough time to make sure we're ready, make sure you get breakfast in you, but just making sure, like, we bring the energy still no matter what time it was. But
nobody was complaining on the group chat like, oh, man, 10 a.m. Come on now, be honest. We're not going to tell who it is, but somebody had to be, right?
Maybe at first we were like, I mean, we don't like it, but we get to play Highlands, so we was getting ready for it.
What about you? So let me – if you guys – be honest, if it's not football practice and you're off on the weekend, what time are you getting out of bed?
Like
2?
12, maybe 11.
What about you?
10:30, 11.
So you almost make kickoff, right? Just
Yeah.
getting up normally. All right. So what do you think at Highlands? I mean, how big was it? Because anytime you're on the road – you know, it's a game of momentum, right? And you know when you're playing a good football team like Highlands, it's going to be back and forth. How big was that kickoff return just to kind of set the tone for the rest of the game?
It was honestly huge. When I saw him take it back, like, it kind of got my energy going. And I thought, like, it kind of got us rolling because it was early in the morning, obviously. We got up early, woke up on the bus, so everybody was kind of tired. And I feel like that really helped us get us going.
So let me ask both you guys. Paul Westhoff, your receivers coach, talked about how you guys are really unselfish. Nobody complains about the number of targets and touches. Is that just something? Has it always been that way? And why do you think – obviously you guys have to be a cohesive group together, right? I mean, what is it that makes it that way? Because it's not always the same case. I mean, you know, if you don't get as many targets one week – if Isaiah doesn't the next week, but you guys seem to really be okay with that. Is it just the winning, the knowing that as long as you keep winning, or is that just the guys together?
I mean, that has to play a part. I mean, if we're winning, you can't really complain, but we're just all really close and like to see each other exceed, and we just got to, like, accept that one day Austin's going to go crazy, and the next week Zay's going to go crazy, and it's just, like, you just got to accept it. You can't really –
Same for you? I mean, are you okay? I mean, because, I mean, obviously, if you were just the number one target, you probably get 10-plus catches a game. But you have to be okay. Are you good with that, with the way it is?
I mean, yeah, honestly, like, we all can make plays. Like, obviously, we all want the ball because we're just playmakers. So, but if we're winning and everybody's doing their job, making plays, and there's nothing to really complain about. So.
Let me ask both of you guys about the offensive line. I mean, I think that those guys have really given Cam O'Hara in many cases. I mean, he's had to scramble, but all quarterbacks do. But what about the job the line has really done so far this year for you guys on offense?
I think they've done really good, and they're just getting better every single week. And we have a somewhat young line, especially like our center, the sophomore. So they're just learning more every week, and they just continue to get better.
From your end, the line?
Yeah, I agree with Jaidan. I feel like they're getting better every week. Like, at the beginning of the season, like, we were making a lot of mistakes, but now it seems like we're starting to get into a flow, and they're all starting to click up front. So
let's talk. Now, you played on Saturday morning last week. Now you turn around, you play on Thursday night. It's senior night, so it's a big night for both of you guys, presumably, and all the other seniors. Talk about the Connor game. I mean, they come in 5-1. You're obviously number one in the state in the media poll. You're number one in the state in the RPI. How big of a game is this? And you know, you guys handled them easily in Hebron last year, but how big is it knowing that they're 5-1 and knowing that this can be a game that can continue to keep the RPI up there, and all you got to do is keep winning, and hopefully you'll be the number one seed entering the postseason?
They obviously got a really good quarterback, so we just can't come in cocky, just can't take them lightly, and really got to come in and do what we do, just do our part. And
what about for you?
I agree. I feel like as long as we come in and do what we do, just treat it like any other game, we should handle them pretty easily. But it's still Connor at the end of the day, so I know that they're going to come out trying to really beat us, but I feel like we should handle them if we do what we do.
Final question for both of you guys. Senior night. Naturally a special night. And Jaidan, I'll start with you, obviously coming over last season. And, when you look at last year and this year, 12-3 last year, 6-0. I mean, it's pretty impressive right now, sitting 18-3 with a legitimate chance to win a state championship. How emotional will it be senior night? And I know, obviously, there are plenty of games after Thursday night, but nonetheless, knowing it's senior night, what is the Cooper program and the last couple of years, what has it meant to you, not just in football, but also as a person?
It's just like really teaching me how to be a part of a family. Because being at my last school, it wasn't a family like this. I didn't really get along with as much people as I do here. I didn't really feel like I fit in there. But like here, it's just like I get along with everybody. I know how to work with people. I know how to I like to see my brother succeed, and then just.
Well, what's it like having your younger brother play too? I mean, that's pretty cool, right? I mean,
I like it, and I'll get to play my last year with him, and I get to do it in basketball too. So it's a blessing. I get to play with him my last year.
So how about you on Thursday night? I mean, do you think about, is that something you think about a senior night? I mean, I realize it's game 7. I mean, there's plenty more, 3 more in the regular season, then you've got the postseason. But nonetheless, what will senior night mean for you?
It'll mean a lot. Like, it's kind of crazy that my senior night's already coming up because it feels like I was just a sophomore the other day. But it's definitely a big moment knowing that I've made it all the way through the program and made a lot of good relationships that are probably going to last my entire life. So I'm really excited for that.
All right, 2 guys who are an integral part of Cooper each and every week, Jaidan Combs, Isaiah Johnson. Guys, keep up the great work. It's been a successful season so far, and we'll see you Thursday night. Big win on Saturday, obviously, and you got to feel pretty darn good about where your football team is. And I got to tell you, just from talking to the other coaches and talking to the players, you can tell that this group has proper perspective. I know there's a lot of coaches, a lot of people that worry about the, overconfident and looking ahead, but I don't get that sense from this group. I get this as, and I know it's the corniest, most brutal cliche, one play at a time, one game at a time, but that is true. I mean, you can't keep what's in front of you if you don't take care of what's next. That's got to make you feel good about the leadership of the guys in the locker room, too, collectively as a group.
Absolutely, and, they're the ones doing this. This really isn't on me. It's not on Coach Brown or any of the coaches. These kids just, they're locked in. They've been locked in from the very beginning. And, we've talked about this. This started back in January when our leaders kind of came in and kind of set these expectations and these goals. And, from January on, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not one, even right now, I don't really like to talk about state championships.
Sure.
I mean,
Well, you got to get to the point where you can talk about it.
Correct. And I think last year, obviously, we were the underdogs a little bit last year and kind of got rolling at the right time. But I don't even think state championship was even mentioned in our locker room or to our team until most probably after we beat Scott County. So, it's a little different perspective than what I'm used to. So we're just all trying to weather it and take one game at a time and stay focused. And, the thing is, and we talked about this from day one, everybody's going to be giving us our best game. Everyone's coming for us. So, and
including Connor on Thursday night.
Connor.
Yeah.
And, you look throughout the years now, last year and 2 years ago or 3 years ago, we beat them pretty handily in the regular season, and they came back and knocked us out in the first round of the playoffs. So, those games are always going to be very competitive. As I mentioned earlier, Coach Trosper does a tremendous job with that group. Those kids always play hard, and if we don't play our best ball game, we could get beat Friday.
Thursday. You could beat Friday.
Yeah,
you'll lose Friday if you show up for the game a day late. But nonetheless, final question. Senior night, I know it's obviously a big night for seniors, but I think it's also a really big night for coaches, and in particular you as the head coach. And this has to be a group of seniors that has meant a tremendous – I mean, with a chance – I know you want to talk about state championship, but they have a legitimate chance to get there. And what will Thursday night mean? Hopefully you're there and not in an infirmary. But what will Thursday night mean for you on a senior night?
Well, and as a coach, and I think even as a player, I think senior night is more so for the parents than it is for us coaches and us players. We got a great group of senior parents that have really bought in and done everything we've asked of them over the last 3 years. So being able to recognize the senior parents and being able to see them walk out with their kids and really kind of have that moment that they've kind of been waiting on for 4 years is something special.
Most coaches, now there's a lot of coaches that are moving senior night to the first home game. Are you aware of that? That's a trend going around. I don't know why. I mean, I would have no earthly idea why, but all right, Thursday night, 7:30 kickoff. Want to see everybody there, so maybe you get the Barleycorns a night early. Thursday night, Cooper hosting Connor, a big district game. Cooper looks to go 7-0 and win a third straight over the Cougars, a big rival game. So want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Terry Boehmker from the Northern Kentucky Tribune. Want to thank Paul Westhoff, Ben Brown, the assistant coaches, and also thank Isaiah and Jaidan for coming out. Billy Priggett for doing the audio, and Matt Razor, who I guess is getting sent to Carolina now, and on Wednesday. So hope everything turned. That's brutal down there. Some of the videos is just awful. You feel we can't complain about a little rain up here. So thanks everybody for coming out tonight. Have yourself a great night. Monday Night Football rolls on, and we'll be back Thursday night. Obviously Cooper for the game, and back next Monday night when Lance McAllister from 700 WLW will join us, assuming that they can tape the show that they tape every Monday. So thanks again to everybody. This has been the Cooper Football Show live here at Florence Barleycorns. Have a great evening.